doesn't grow on trees. It comes from taxpayers, and taxpayers are hard pressed. If you own property, this town thinks your house is the piggy bank. And well, you might have a 1% cap, but all these extra items that you vote for in the elections, guess what? It comes back to roost. Now, I want to talk about the living wage ordinance, issue item 12, because I had an issue with that back in 2011. There was this council chief deputy for Greg Smith named Mitchell Englander, and he was running for office. And he had a $500,000 plus war chest, money for 3 consultants. I've read his records. And the person wanted me to go door to door for Englander. And I said, sure, as long as I get paid the city's living wage ordinance. We were talking at the time about $10.50 an hour. You can do whatever you want with the living wage ordinance. I mean, he was just so cheap. There was money for consultants, but not money for grunt work. I believe in a day's work for a day's pay. I'm not Mary Fagan, who's going to work 60 hours a week in Atlanta, Georgia for 10 cents. That's 10 cents more than Englander would have offered. But then what do you expect? Those were New York Jews exploiting the South, as always. But let's give them, at least you got 10 cents more than Englander would have offered. I mean, people work hard for their money. You don't take away their paycheck, or you don't deprive them of a paycheck. You guys, I don't see any of you folks, city attorneys or the officers or the staff or the council members out here doing this for free. Not at all. So everybody deserves their hire, and they deserve the pay. Now, we talk about the airport, the Van Nuys. Remember, LAX is NIMBYville, not in my backyard. So when it comes to the faster flights, they won't go there. We could divert flights from Van Nuys there. We could divert flights to Burbank. I would want to call Burbank Calico. It's a ghost town. The guys do nothing over there but jack their dicks because there's not enough flights to come in to justify.
Thank you so much. Wayne from Encino. What would you like to be heard on?
Let's see here. All the goddamn items and general comment.
All right, go ahead.
So, anyway, we got this felon in number 26. We have a felony suspect giving out a Great South Park bid. Why are felony suspects committing legislation to tax people? How can we trust what the fuck this guy's doing? Current price. And, you know, the shame of it is you got Hugo sitting there on his fucking phone, not listening to this shit, while criminals are being indicted by our DA. In fact, let's give our DA, George Gascon, the goddamn attention that fine man deserves, because everybody protecting current price's big black ass. And item number 22, another goddamn Figueroa corridor bid. The felony suspect is joining Unisys and joining Sleazy Marchese to tax property. How can you fucking have a guy facing 10 felony counts making tax decisions on law-abiding citizens? That's like the mafia collecting a tariff on the non-unionized rabbis in all the goddamn temples. Now, we can't allow that. No, we can't allow that. Number 19, the criminal reappears again. CD9, a bid. Where's this bid coming from? Who makes this decision? And the answer is,
well, it's up to the council members' discretion as long as Tracy Park can build her projects. Current price can fuck his constituents.
And it's a vote trading scheme on the city council. And that's why Pat McOsker's doing what typically we call him Home Depot Buckethead, because his head fits perfectly in the large 5-gallon bucket head. And he's just flipping through those pages because that's what people do when they're guilty, right? They flip through pages or they check their phones and they pretend they're busy with business. This guy's reading nothing.
Sir, stay on the subject matter within the jurisdiction of this committee.
Well, that's what he's doing. This is exactly right. Your goddamn committee sitting there pretending they ain't listening. Now, look what happened to Hugo. He fell asleep. Look at that. He's
Mr. Spindler, come on. Get on the items, please.
Asleep. I mean, I could bring a rooster in here. Look at that. He's
Mr. Spindler.
I mean,
Please,
does
items
this man
or
need
matters
medical
before the
attention? I mean, look at this
jurisdiction
thing.
of this
I've never
committee.
seen something. This guy looks like
Can
he's
you
out
pick
of
an
a,
item?
Look at that. There he is. Thank God.
Anything?
He's okay. And so, you know, we're going to go completely 100% gangster on every meeting until Tracy Park gets Paul Martin Krikorian to give us back our general public comment at city council meetings. You are not going to push general public comment all the way to the end and fuck us out of our general public comment without us fighting back. We're going to fight back by making every meeting a total and complete shit show like never before. Let's give me a hand for that. All right.
Time's
All right,
ahead.
that's what it is.
Tom Materna. Come on up, Mr. Materna.
Is there a clock? Oh, there is a clock. Okay. Good afternoon.
What would you like to be heard on?
I hope I'm going to be respectful here.
Thank you. What would you like to be heard on today?
I'm going to talk on general public comment and the Board of Airport Commissioners and other items regarding airports.
Okay, so you have 1 for general public comment and 2 for the agenda items.
It's a total of 3 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Now the number's right. Well, good afternoon, Commissioner or Councilmember Park, Chair Park, and council members, and thank you for paying attention during public comment. I hope that if I'm respectful for you, you can be respectful for me. I'm Tom Materna. I live in Council District 4. My elected councilwoman, Nithya Raman, co-signed 23-1339, which I hope you guys have all read because it's coming up. Could you please afford the 1.8 million residents residing in the Valley to put that on the next agenda, February 3rd? Certainly the health and well-being of 1.8 million people in the Valley take priority over some of the parking provisions and other items that don't seem as important to the health and well-being of so many people get missed on the agenda. We have an enormous disadvantage and need this committee to cooperate and acknowledge that as council members, you make up the body that is responsible and obligated to protect city interests, and those include those of us working and residing in the San Fernando Valley. We need city council to follow CD6's lead and finally make Van Nuys Airport issues a priority because people are being poisoned every day in their homes and places of work adjacent to the airport and under narrow path flights. Bad development deals are causing this city and our entire valley irresponsible and irreversible harm. One of those bad deals will be coming before you February 6th. I hope you put it on the agenda. Please follow the recommendations of CD6 on the Bonseft-Helinet proposal and reject it. It's a bad proposal. This project has been exposed as failing to include investments for the city by failing to incorporate critically needed modernization upgrades. The money invested is to the benefit of the foreign firm and not to the benefit of the city and the citizens. It must be rejected as neither a CEQA process or a Band-Aid modification can fix the ill-fated plan. Please ensure that motion 2339 and the Bonseft-Helinet proposals are on your next agenda so they can be dealt with. Your very first agenda in February, February 6th, please commit to us, you'll put it on there. We need you to defer to CD6 and allow the Valley representation to protect their districts from disproportionate and irreputable harm. I also like to point out that LAWA has not yet explained to this committee how they created this huge monster of a problem at Van Nuys Airport, which they were asked to do a year ago with 1489 that is supposed to be in front of this committee for a year now. Please get LAWA in here and have them explain how they did that to the Valley.
Mr. Materna, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Suzanne Gutierrez, come on up. Ms. Gutierrez, what would you like to be heard on?
General public comment and the BOAC starting with the, agenda item number 4.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
It should be 3 minutes. General public
You have
comment. and
one
the BOAC.
agenda item, up to 2 minutes for the
Yeah.
agenda. Go ahead, you
Yes.
have 3.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think I need all of it, but just in case. Okay. Hello. My name is Suzanne Gutierrez. I am a 21-year resident of CD6 and I live right next door to the Van Nuys Airport with my husband and 2 kids. I sent you a printout, and you can see my beautiful family. It was very upsetting to see that neither the detrimental Bonsef Helinet deal or motion 23-1339 made it on today's agenda. We are suffering a health crisis. The rejection of Bonsef Helinet and the support of this motion are both urgent and vital steps toward resolve. Ms. Park, I hope you understand how dire the VNY crisis is, and I would invite any 3 of you or all of you to come just for a moment to my home so you can smell the jet fumes that we breathe every single day. There is no item more important than the one that deals directly with the health and well-being of innocent families. Every day that our children choke down these toxic fumes, and they do, they are breathing them in every day.
Ma'am, Ms. Gutierrez, I'm sorry. I'm going to pause you real quick. And if I could have you go ahead and stop the time. I just want to take a minute to interrupt public comment here. And I want to thank everyone from the Valley that has come today to talk about Van Nuys Airport. And I want to be clear, that is not on the agenda today.
Sure.
We are working very closely with CD6, and we look forward to scheduling that.
Great.
When that is in front of this committee, we will take full robust comment on it. But for today's purposes, I'm going to be limiting comment on Van Nuys issue on Bosnef Helinet for 1 minute. So unless you have other agenda items, we're going to have to postpone this and talk about it when that item is in front of us.
So am I getting?
So I'm going to go ahead and let you go.
Finish up.
Go ahead.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Thank you. We drove from the Valley. We were supposed to also meet at Plum, which happens to be at the same time at 2 p.m.
And we understand that that was canceled, and we
Yes.
appreciate that everyone's here. I just want to be clear, that is not on our agenda today, and we look forward to having it
on February 6th.
very soon. So we'll look forward to having you back then.
February 6th.
All right.
The day before my birthday. Councilwoman Padilla and her due diligence, and we need outside districts to defer to CD6 because no one else has the right to decide our fate. Please ensure both CF 23-1339 and the Bonsef Helinet nightmare are on the next agenda, February 6th, with your intent to vote to send the Bonsef proposal to City Council with a recommendation to reject. No modifications, reject. Again, every day counts for the health of our children. Please do not prolong our chance for resolve. Please do not allow another self-serving city-damaging project like Bonsef to get rubber stamped. My children's health is the consequence of this procrastination. And that's a picture of my husband, Eddie, myself, my son, Nicholas, and my daughter, Leona. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Alicia Avery. Good afternoon, Miss Avery. What would you like to be heard on?
I would like to be heard on general comment as well as 4 through 10.
Okay, go
And,
ahead.
Per your update, some of mine does pertain to 23-1339, so there might be a sprinkle, but it's not the whole thing.
Okay, great. We're going to try to keep that to general public comment
Yeah.
today. Thanks.
Okay, that'll be part of the general comment 1 minute. My name is Alicia Avery. I have 2 daughters, 4 and 7, and I live in Lake Balboa, CD6, directly adjacent to Van Nuys Airport. I was very disappointed to learn that T3 had failed to ensure that 23-1339 was not on today's agenda, especially given it was on Plum's agenda as well. The failure to give the Van Nuys crisis a space to be heard today stalls progress on a critically needed action. None of this committee's members are impacted by Van Nuys Airport. My children and myself are physically. And historically, the stakeholders of Van Nuys Airport have been ignored by our city and LAWA, and that is reflected in multiple city records, including Council File 11-1878, that stated, and I quote, LAWA has had difficulty in addressing proper attention to Van Nuys Airport and surrounding community, and it is prudent to examine current management practices by the Los Angeles World Airport. Motion 1339 means to do the latter, to examine current management practices by LAWA that are failing this city and its citizens. Specifically, LAWA has harmed this city by failing to create policy for land use developments that modernize the property to reduce toxic ground emissions. And they aim to irresponsibly push another project for approval that also fails to include those critically needed mitigation measures. The need for trade, travel, and tourism to compel LAWA to transmit the Bonds F. Helenet proposal to be heard on your next agenda as well, and we need T3 to recommend its rejection by City Council. Valley residents, as myself, are putting the council on notice that unless a development project includes the practical use of electrified hangars and ramps, as well as adequate jet blast or acoustic wall barriers and approved height tree canopy borders, then it must be rejected. As those failures have resulted in disproportionate harm for residents and toxic fume exposures for adjacent homes and businesses. Bonds F. Helenet does not include those critical mitigation upgrades, and this is unacceptable. Please make sure that both 23-1339 and Bonds F. Helenet are on your next agenda, February or sooner. And please reject Bonds F. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Avery. Sue Steinberg?
I want to talk about general comments, but also the BOAC related items 8, 9, and 10.
All right, so you have a total of 3 minutes for general public comment and the items.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I appreciate that the chair has put a hold on all Van Nuys business until we were represented. However, now we are represented, thankfully, in our CD6 by Imelda Padilla. I believe the motion 23-1339 was supposed to be on today. It was not. It was moved, but it will be hopefully on February 6th. And again, please add this to the agenda and the Bonds F. Helenet issue, which you've been hearing about. Support 23-1339 and reject Bonds F. Helenet. More on general comment. Like my Valley friends here, I live in the most highly impacted neighborhood from Van Nuys Airport. It's an area called the Pocket, and here on the map, I can show it to you because we're literally across the street. It's like living on the tarmac of LAX. Now, I've lived there since '86, and I'm not saying close the airport. I'm not saying close Van Nuys. It serves a purpose. It brings in money. It's self-sustainable, and it will continue to be. But you know what? It's killing us. There are jets, literally, I could throw a rock and hit a jet, and have often wanted to, from our front yard. Now, it's not just about Van Nuys. It affects 1.8 million people in the Valley, and it affects all of Los Angeles. The city council members need to support that motion because as community leaders, your job is to protect all constituents, not just the West Side, not just business, not just the 1%, not just LAWA, because the health, well-being, and environmental impact of Van Nuys does affect everyone here in LA, not just the Valley, and it's getting bad. The airport has been allowed, and through legal or not so legal means, to expand to the point where it has become a killer. It is detrimental to a lot of people because they're still selling leaded gas. My cars had to use unleaded gas for 30 years. Why aren't planes? There is jet fuel that is sustainable and won't kill us. That's not being used there. Why not? This is a city issue because Van Nuys sits on city property. So you all have to be paying attention to what's happening there. I know you're limiting us, but it's important. It's killing us. We die so the 1% can fly. All those people flying in and out of Van Nuys don't live in the area. They use it, and we pay the price.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Steinberg.
Well, I just want to say one more thing.
Your time's up. I'm really sorry, but we'll look
Has it been
forward to
3 minutes?
having you again. That was 3 minutes?
That was 3
That was 3 minutes. I'm sorry, Red Chief?
Okay.
Thank you.
Please support. Please help us because we have no
Red
voice.
Chief? Red Chief going once, going twice. Greenster? Going once, going twice. Greenster? Noel Weiss, please, come on up. Mr. Weiss, what would you like to be heard on?
General public comment.
All right, you've got 1 minute. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Speaking of socializing the risks on the backs of the people, I'm here to talk about the Plains facility in Wilmington. Mr. McCosker's familiar with it. I think hopefully the rest of you members of the committee will become more familiar with it. What we're talking about generally is a need for mitigation, risk analysis. There are ways of doing it competently, and for you committee members who may not be familiar, and I'll be back to try to educate you as we go along, and hopefully Mr. McCosker will step into the breach here. What we're talking about is 25 million gallons of butane stored in two 12.5 million gallon tanks. They're not behind serious walls. It's a potential terrorist hazard, and we're in a situation where that risk has to be mitigated. The port's been aware of it. They've been there since the 70s. I think it's fair to say, and Mr. McCosker's come out and said he wants them gone. In the meantime, we have rail going through the port on port facilities, because that rail is a port asset. So under these circumstances, hopefully the committee, through Mr. McCosker's efforts, will begin to give serious consideration to making something positive happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. All right, looks like our final speaker, Puppets Alice Wonderland. Is that you, Mr. Herman? All right, sorry, Mr. Spindler. You already went. All right, so that concludes public comment. Unless there are any objections from my colleagues, I would like to move items 6 through 28 on consent. Any objections? Oscar?
Thank you.
All right, great. Mr. Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Park,
Yes.
McCosker. Yes. Soto Martinez.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to items 1 and 2, which I would like to consider together. So, Mr. Clerk, if you would, please read those items for us.
Item number 1, Bureau of Contract Administration report relative to the fiscal year 2021 through 2022 local business enterprise, local business preference program. Item number 2, City Attorney report and a draft ordinance relative to amending Los Angeles Administrative Code Section 10.5 to provide an additional bid and proposal preference to businesses located in the City of Los Angeles, to revise the preference amounts and other technical changes.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Clerk. I believe we have representatives from Bureau of Contract Administration and the City Attorney's Office here to join us. If so, please go ahead and come up to the table. Hopefully we have enough chairs. If not, maybe we can get some help making sure everyone has a place to sit. And if you could just state your names for us. All right. So I will go ahead and turn the floor over to you. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Good afternoon, Linda McGlinchey, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good afternoon, Mark Gutierrez, Bureau of Contract Administration. And so item 1 before you is the citywide local business preference program fiscal year 21-22 report that was uploaded late last month. I'm going to share some of the data points now. We, in the Bureau of Contract Administration, we got with all city departments who all responded and reported a total of 3,396 projects which were eligible for the LBPP. That amounts to $3.708 billion. Of those about 3,300 projects, 913 went to local business enterprises. That totals $1.289 billion, and that represents 34.76% of dollars. In comparison to last year, last year's number was 31.83%, so it looks like we're about a third of dollars that go to local business enterprises. Of those 913 awards, 8 were awarded to LBEs due to the LBPP. That total is $28,799,901. That represents 0.78% of the spend. And then the total cost to the city to award to LBEs over non-LBEs was $1,704,251, and that represents only 0.05% of the spend. This fiscal year, there are 2 unique certifications that we tracked. They're local small business and local transitional employer, LSB and LTE. Those were added via ordinance made effective August 7th, 2021. So the first data set that we've obtained for those two certifications are 60 awards in fiscal year 21-22 for LSB, totaling 8.79 million, and then no LTE awards over that same reporting period. With that, I could take any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. I want to thank my colleagues, council members Blumenfield and Harris Dawson, along with former council member Koretz, for putting forward the original motion that resulted in this ordinance, which effectuates what Los Angeles voters approved in June of 2022. And as I looked at items 1 and 2, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. The share of local businesses receiving awards due to the local business program has declined precipitously from 8% in fiscal year 2013 to 0.75% in fiscal year 2021. I was just wondering if you could explain to us what may account for this drop.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I do want to mention, while I can't answer that specifically, the total percentage, if you look at, I guess, column 2 between those two data points, fiscal year 13-14 and 21-22, those remain the same, or close, at 35.9 and 34.7. And so there's situations, and it's common, where awards are made to a local business enterprise because that business happens to just be the low bidder or the best proposer. And so the preference wouldn't allow them to necessarily jump a non-LBE. It's just by happenstance that the best proposer, the best bidder, was an LBE. So that wouldn't be captured necessarily as a result of the program. But what you do bring up is a good point. I don't know exactly why there was a huge drop there.
Okay, well, maybe that's something that we can follow up on in a future update.
If I may too, just looking at this very quickly, that there's also a big difference in the dollar amounts of the total annual award amounts between 2013 and the 22-23 fiscal year. So while the LBE awards did go up, the percentage that they increased compared to the annual overall contracting awards for the city, it doesn't match up. So that may be the resulting appearance of sorry, the amount going down.
Right. Okay. Is our local business preference award rate comparable to what has been implemented in other cities? Is that a data point that you have, or have you looked at how we compare it all to other cities and their local business programs?
We haven't looked recently. It's been a few years, so I couldn't speak to that right now. We can certainly go back and look at that.
Were there any departments who did not respond to this request for information that you're aware of?
In this reporting period, all departments did respond, yes.
So as we implement the latest changes to our local business preference programs, can you walk me through what community engagement is going to look like? How are we going to let local City of Los Angeles businesses know that we've done this and these opportunities are available to them?
So once the new ordinance goes through, we will be working with the Chief Procurement Office in terms of outreach, as well as many of our partners will incorporate information about the change in our Accessing LA events. The next one is Build With in February, and then we have Team With in May and Rise With in September, October, generally speaking. We'll also be sending notifications to all of the chambers that we deal with and work with. We have a BCA now has a community affairs advocate who is tasked with things such as this, specifically in getting the word out with changes.
Okay, great. I just want to say that I am really excited about the expansion of opportunities for our local businesses. And so I am really excited about the efforts that we're taking here. If I recall correctly, there's a 3-year look back. If this is in fact adopted and moves forward, to evaluate how this program has worked. And if I'm right about that, what are the benchmarks? How are we going to know that this program has succeeded?
So luckily, we've been doing these annual reports, so we know where we are now. And yes, it includes a 3-year review, shall we say. So once adopted, we will come back in 3 years to talk about what's occurred over those 3 years. We'll have 3 more annual reports we will have provided to you in that time. And at that point, working with city attorney, we will obviously make any recommendations if we believe any amendments are needed.
All right, well, we will look forward to that, and I will remain optimistic about the success that we're going to have growing business here locally. I want to open it up to my colleagues to see if any questions. Councilmember Soto Martinez? Mr. McCosker?
Just to follow up on your question, so all departments participated. That includes proprietary departments? The proprietaries participate in this as well?
Yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you. So for item 1, I would move that we note and file the Bureau of Contract Administration report. Mr. Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Park,
Yes.
McCosker,
Yes.
Soto Martinez.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. And then for item 2, I move that we note and file the city attorney report and approve the ordinance. And thank you, city attorney, for being here as well. Mr. Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Park,
Yes.
McCosker,
Yes.
Soto Martinez.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3. Mr. Clerk, if you would please read the item for us.
Community Redevelopment Agency Los Angeles Bond Oversight Committee report relative to the 7th CRA-LA excess bond proceeds project status report.
All right. And I think we have someone from the CLA's office. Yes, if you could please state your name for us. Okay. All right.
Is your mic on?
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. This is Oscar Ishko at the CLA's office.
Well, it's fantastic to have you both. We appreciate the presentation. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm just going to give a brief overview and then I'm happy to take any questions. Again, my name is Nathan Holmes and I'm the principal project coordinator who has overseen this program with the CAO. And just a little bit of background. In 2015, the city received about $84 million in leftover bond proceeds that was part of an agreement with the former CRA. And we had a couple deadlines at that time. Within 5 years, we had to encumber all of that money into different projects within the former redevelopment areas throughout the city. And then within 10 years, we would have to expend that money on these projects. And so we received a couple more amounts of principal, and then with interest, that amount is, as of today, almost 98.5 million. Now that's a little bit different from the number in your report because I'm reporting now in January of 2024. And I'll try to do my best to kind of differentiate those numbers as we talk about this because this report is, you know, a little bit out of date at this point. So as of today, we have 79 different projects. 45 of them have been completed. The rest of those projects are, most of them are in implementation. Some are still in the design phase, though we expect them to be implemented. And there's a couple which I'm sure we may want to talk about that are either still being developed or in stages of reprogramming. So just to quickly return to that, the fact that the data is a little bit out of date. So we went to the project managers in September of last year, and got an update on where those projects stood. And then the way that works is I assemble that information with my colleagues at the CLA and EWDD. We write a report, and I think it hit the holidays, and so it's a little bit delayed. But we also have been having some staffing issues with the administration of the program. And so since the inception of this program, the data has always lagged by a couple months, and sometimes that can get up to 3 months. And we've been doing our best to cut that down, but it's proven difficult due to early retirements and things like that. Specifically, the accounting staff at certain departments has made it a little bit more challenging than we would have liked. That said, today I'm going to present you with a new total of $98.5 million, and where the report before you shows a little over half of the money expended, we can report today that we have about 60% expended. So that's a better number. It's not a number that we would like to be further along. We still have about $40 million left to expend in this calendar year, 2024. That's about 40% of the funds. We can potentially talk about that in discussion, but the vast majority of our projects are expected to expend that money this year. For various reasons, it landed toward the end of our program. And just to give you one quick example, 2 projects, the 6th Street Viaduct Park project in CD14, which is about $3.5 million left. That is on track and it's expected to expend its funds within 6 to 8 months. And the Pio Pico Library project in CD10, that's almost $7 million. Again, a project that is on track and expected to expend its funds. That right there would be 10% of our program. And so we do have some challenges that we can talk about, but overall, a majority of our projects are on track and we expect them to meet our deadline. So I'll stop there. I don't know if my colleague has anything you want to add.
I just wanted to mention what some of the critical deadlines were that are involved in this program. So as Nathan mentioned, the city entered into this contract in January of 2015. There were 2 major milestones that the city was required to achieve, and the first one was within 5 years, all of the funds needed to be encumbered, dedicated to eligible projects in which the city was successful in doing so. The second milestone is for expenditure of all of the funds by January of 2025. That is the deadline that we're working towards. Internally, we have a deadline of September 30th, 2024. The reason we did that was to allow EWDD as the administrator of the financing portion of this program enough time to process invoices and get that money out the door. For compliance with the CRA, we're required to have the money out the door, not just encumbered in an eligible project. So with that, part of the reason that the CAO has been tasked with this report was to monitor the progress of all of the projects involved in the program and to identify any issues that need concern, need special attention, to try and resolve and get those projects moving forward. So as he mentioned, there are a handful of projects that we are concerned about, that we are working towards resolving or getting significant progress on, but it is an ongoing situation for the entire program, and that'll be the case until the end of the year. So,
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Ishko. And Mr. Holmes, I heard you echo a similar sentiment of being confident that we were going to be able to timely expend the funds consistent with those required deadlines. But I've now also heard both of you express some concerns about some challenges. So I'm wondering if you could just maybe give us a bit of the lay of the land on where are the issues and challenges? What are the concerns that you're having about this?
Sure. I think, excuse me, some of the concerns are just due to the fact that we still have some projects that are relatively in the early stages of development, which ideally that wouldn't be the case at this stage. Sometimes these are due to factors on the ground. For example, we have a project right now that we're working on in CD7 that it's about $5.5 million, and the vision for this economic development incubator just couldn't come to fruition as originally intended. And so we've had to go to the state to get an amendment to this bond plan. And we've been working very closely with the council office and with GSD and BOE to figure out what part of this project can be saved. And so it's just still in the design phase. And we have a plan. We just met with them today to try to get this money spent, but that's the kind of thing where conditions on the ground just changed. Other times there are reprogrammings due to different visions. Maybe new council members come in and have a different vision. And so we always work to try to achieve that new vision. And then sometimes it's departments and their construction schedules. We have about 6 to 8 projects that are with Streets LA, and they have just gotten very behind. That said, they are aware of our deadline, and I talk to them every couple of weeks. I say, are we still on track for this project, for that project? We've had meetings with all of the project managers and their executive to make sure they know that our money has this deadline. I don't know if, Oscar, you want to say more about what you do kind of on the council side, but we are constantly in touch with the project managers and the council office to try to figure out how we can push some of these projects that are still further behind to meet our deadline.
One measure that the CLA's office has done that's outside of the CAO's report is that we have taken the CAO's report and we've identified all the council district specific projects and prepared a memo to each council district that identifies all of their projects, their current status, and any issues of concern. And the plan going forward is for us to continue doing that, and we have to do this on a monthly basis so that the council office is fully aware of the projects in their district and perhaps can assist in addressing some of the challenges that we've incurred. Sometimes it's a matter of prioritizing projects within implementing departments. That has been a challenge. Part of the setback that this program has endured is the pandemic caused a major delay in the schedule of these projects. As a result of the pandemic, there's been cost escalation in construction costs, which have created some challenges on the budget side. And then there's the limited resources that have resulted from the pandemic. A lot of this city resources retired. There's now a lot of vacancies. And so processing invoices has been one of the major challenges of this program. There are a significant amount of projects that have been completed or are near completion, and their funding sources almost at 100%. And that's all a cause of delays in processing invoices. So the figures that Nathan presented don't quite paint the entire picture as it currently stands, but we feel that going forward there will be a drastic change in that, not 100%, but that's what we're working towards.
Well, I'm glad to hear that there is some effort, especially to coordinate with the council members who might be able to help in driving some of this to completion. But I wanted to ask a related question in this kind of, you've addressed it a little bit, but as I look at table 4, I see certain departments that have, not completed or barely completed the projects assigned to them. And I'll just call out a couple: BOE 3 of 12, Bureau of Street Services 5 of 13, OCB 0 of 8, and LADOT 3 of 7 for completed projects. And so I've heard some of the issues that have caused delays, and I presume those are universal, but for specific departments that have stuff that is not completed or is in the pipeline, who is primarily responsible for, kind of holding them over the fire and ensuring that they're meeting timelines?
Sure, I'll
go ahead.
Okay. To address the last part of your question first, there's a member of the executive office of each department that is assigned to our program. So we do have a direct liaison, and then each individual project has a project manager. BOE, unfortunately, I shouldn't say not unfortunately, but just as it happens, those projects tend to just involve a lot more design and longer runways. And so when they were conceived, and if you look, you can see they tend to have higher price tags as well. You know, the money may be spent on construction, and so it just takes maybe a year or two of design and different related work like that before it can actually expend our funds. That's certainly the case with the two projects I mentioned, Pio Pico Library Park and 6th Street Viaduct Park, and there are others. With the case of Streets LA, that was due to sort of a staff shortage. They had a shortage of crews, but you know, they know about our deadline, and so they've assured us they're going to spend the money on time. OCB, those tend to be sort of ongoing work, graffiti abatement, putting in street trees, and so those projects were sort of designed to last the entirety of the program in a certain way, but that work is being done on all of those projects in that department. And then the last one, DOT, 3 of those are safe routes to school projects that just required a lot of different design work and community engagement, and those just got slowed down a bit. And so, Oscar, I don't know if I've missed anything.
No, just to answer your question about who is responsible for overseeing the implementation, that would be the CAO's office. The program has basically 2 arms, the financial arm, which is handled by EWDD, and the CAO's office is overseeing implementation. So that is why they produced this report to the council. We understand it's a report that is done or should be done on a quarterly basis, but seeing where we are in the term of this program, we are now looking at doing it on a monthly, if not sooner than that basis. So we can make sure that these projects continue to move forward, or we make some changes to make sure the funds are spent.
Those deadlines are getting closer and closer, and that's real money, and these are great projects.
Yes.
And so we want to make sure that we are fully utilizing all of the dollars and making the most of these opportunities. One final question, and then I'll open it up to my colleagues. Under table 4, attachment 2, there are some completed projects with leftover balances. How are those funds being reprogrammed?
So with any remnant funds from a project, we make sure that the council office is aware of them. And then we work with the council office to identify alternative projects to utilize those funds. The best solution to that has been to move the money over to projects that are already in progress, so that we're just moving it to another eligible project for a scope of work that has already been approved. And that's been the quickest way. We are really trying to avoid a new project at this point, seeing that the time constraint that we have. So we're really trying hard to stay away from that. But for the most part, we've had several projects, particularly in Council District 3, Council District 13, and I believe Council District 7, which we've moved funds towards already approved projects, and it's been done just simply through a motion.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the candid discussion about where the challenges are. There's a lot of pieces baked into what you raised today, a lot of policy changes and things that we need to think about as a city and a council. That's it for my questions. Mr. Soto Martinez, anything?
No, I just want to say, you know, we have very similar challenges with CDBG money I've been dealing with. But is there any, what we're doing there is repurposing some fund, like being very honest with the departments, and if they can't fulfill it, then try to move the money to something that we could do quickly. Like, is there any possibility of that with this sort of funds?
So with the challenge of the time constraint that we have, in certain circumstances, we are trying to identify alternative funds that could be swapped in and don't have that time constraint. For instance, a project in Council District 3, the Reseda River Loop, has a significant amount of funding committed to it, but the schedule, the implementation schedule, is not going to meet our deadline.
Yeah.
And so the council office has looked at alternative funds from another source so that these funds, the CRA funds, are moved to an eligible project already in place that can spend the money quickly and then backfill it with the alternative source of funds. So that is a way that we're resolving some of these issues. In others, there's other eligible components within a project that could use the funds, and so we're doing it. I believe in your district, we just approved a motion that is moving funds to another eligible component of a related project, and so with any of those, we look at, is this really feasible, right? Is there a plan to spend this money within the time frame that we've set, or that is set? So those are the challenges that we look at.
Yeah. So with the CDBG just to use a similar situation, right? Like the general manager of that department was really ringing the alarm bells, and we and every meeting every month we're moving things along. Like, are we at this point here with
Yes.
UPR? Okay.
Yes, we definitely are.
Okay. So do you have like a list of projects where sort of those things can happen, like the swaps, like just a long list of them, so we can start moving some of that?
We had an internal working group discussion about this last week, and we will be meeting this week to create such a list of the projects that we feel are of heavy concern, and try to come up with a plan to move those along or resolve whatever issues are there. So that report to each council office is forthcoming.
Okay, thank
you.
Well, thank you for your leadership on that. You've got some great projects pending in CD13, and hopefully you'll be able to utilize all of those dollars to deliver some great amenities for your constituents. Councilmember McCosker?
Thank you. So unspent bond money gets swept out to the Department of Finance, State Department of Finance? How does it get swept? Where does it get swept?
So if the city is unsuccessful in spending some of its bond funds, the bonds will be returned to the CRA, the successor agency to be exact, and then they will use those funds to pay down the bonds. So that's most likely what they're going to do. But if the city is unsuccessful, they are subject to be swept and returned to the CRA.
Okay. So back to the successor agency. So one of the categories, and I don't think it's very prevalent, but one of the categories looks like unallocated interest. What happens to unallocated interest? Can it be spent on anything? There's at least one. It's not much money. You can get back to me on that.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to allocate all of the interest to an eligible project.
All eligible projects have to be in the boundaries of the former planned area?
Yes. One of the areas in which we've been looking at utilizing some of that unallocated interest is in administration. The administration funding that is allowed per the bond expenditure agreement is very limited to 16% of taxable bond funds. So that amount is what has been set for the entire 10-year period. And EWD in its last staffing or budget report showed that there was only about $1 million left to pay for staff for this remaining year and to the end of the contractual period. So they have had to tap into other resources to pay for their staff, and so we are looking at possibly using that interest to help backfill those funds.
Okay, and then I don't want anyone to relax, but if the successor agency said we could have more time, we could have more time? Or are they statutorily bound to take it back?
There is no statutory constraint. It's all contractual, and it can be negotiated. So that is something that has been brought up, has not really moved at this point, but it is a possibility to request an extension from the CRA.
Yeah.
This is just an example. It's not very much money, but I have one that was allocated for a particular project, a mechanical arm at a private developer. And when we came in, we just had the private developer do it themselves. So that project's done without any public money. It's a different alternative. It was more cost effective. It was more sustainable. It was a better project. So that money has to be reallocated.
Correct.
Within the project area. So I want to make sure that, do I contact you to make sure something's put back on the reallocation list?
Yes, we've been in communication with Sergio Carrillo of your staff. And so we've informed him of what the eligible projects are. So for each project area, there is a bond spending plan that is included as an attachment to the agreement. And it identifies eligible projects that were negotiated at the onset of the agreement.
Yeah.
Now, if there's something that you would like to spend that is not on that list, but it would be an eligible use of bond funds
Yep.
generally, then we can seek an amendment to the agreement to include a new project.
Yeah.
That is something that we're trying to stay away from at this point because we don't have the luxury of time. We are doing it in one particular district, Council District 7, which Nathan mentioned earlier. But if the time constraint were to be removed, then that would be a possibility that we could pursue.
Okay. All right, that was just an illustration. I wasn't trying to do my business here. But some things will have to, I mean, with the amount of time that went by.
It's a common concern
For a
among
year. I mean, I sat
several.
on that oversight committee. This money sat for years and years and years and years. And we were just, in our district, we were done waiting.
Yeah.
So we just had the developer do it.
In several of the projects that we're concerned about, the major issue is time.
Yeah.
That we don't have enough time to spend the money down.
All right.
So,
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Thanks very much, Chair.
you're welcome.
All right, thank you. I move that we note and file the report. Mr. Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Park,
Yes,
McCosker,
Yeah.
Soto Martinez.
Yes.
thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item number 4. Mr. Clerk, if you would read the item, please.
Sure. A Board of Airport Commissioners report relative to a third amendment to contract number DA 5260 with Solar Turbines Incorporated to exercise the first one-year renewal option at a second one-year renewal option and increase the contract authority for the ongoing maintenance and repair of 2 cogeneration turbines at Los Angeles International Airport and administrative and categorical exemptions.
All right, thank you so much. We have some folks here from LAWA to present on item 4, please. If there are any remarks or updates you'd like for us to have on this item?
Good afternoon. Richard Connolly, Deputy Executive Director, LAWA Facilities Management Division. Before you is a request to approve the first one-year renewal option and a second renewal option and increase our authority by $1 million. The current contract expires in February of 2024. And if this item is approved, it'll extend the contract to 2026.
Okay, thank you. So this report shares that Solar Turbines has not authorized any third parties to do the repair or maintenance work, meaning we're obligated to contract with Solar Turbines to do it. So when we're making investments in technology like that, and as you go out for new RFPs, are you looking long-term to the broader marketplace and what your back-end opportunities and options may be to maintain and repair items like this?
We are.
Because it feels like we're a little bit buying into a monopoly in the system in front of us.
This was, in my view, a gap in the procurement. Currently, we are looking at alternatives to the incumbent to see if there are opportunities that we can take advantage of. Secondarily, we are looking into replacing the turbines. And when we do that, we're just not going to swap one set of golden handcuffs for another set of golden handcuffs. So we're looking at this very, very closely.
Thanks. Just out of curiosity, when you swap out those turbines, where do they go?
They're rebuilt. They rebuilt.
The old ones get recycled and rebuilt?
They rebuild them and bring us in a brand new turbine.
Cool. All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad to hear the response that when you go out to a new RFP, you'll be looking for a little bit broader service options just to ensure we're getting the best, most economic deals.
It's very painful operationally and on the budget side to have sole source.
I'm sure. All right. I don't have any other questions. No. Councilmember Soto Martinez?
No, not on my part.
Mr. McCosker?
No, thank you.
All right. I move that we approve item 4. Mr. Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Park,
Yes.
McCosker,
Yes.
Soto Martinez.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Clerk, is there anything else pending before the committee?
No, that clears the desk.
All right. Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Test, test, test.